All right, it's your favorite time, friends. I know that you look forward to this time, but this is my summary on Islam. You know, Islam is a very highly misunderstood religion, as we found out in our warm-up, but there's a difference between Arab, Muslim, and Islam, and a lot of people confuse those terms. An Arab is based on language and culture. There are 22 countries. It's someone from an Arab-speaking country. Again, there are 22 of those. A Muslim is someone who practices the religion of Islam, just like a Christian is someone who practices Christianity, or a Jew is someone who practices Judaism. So a lot of people will throw those terms around and not really know what they mean, so I really want you to know what those mean. Islam itself emerged in the Middle East, much like Judaism and Christianity, and it didn't come until centuries later. You know, century means 100 years, so we're talking 600 plus years later. It emerges, and it grew really, really fast. And it was taught by Muhammad. Muhammad's the main character, and he was born in a place called Mecca. And Mecca was an important place for trade at the time, so it's a hustle and bustle, a lot going on there. And Muhammad became really successful merchant, and a merchant was someone who traveled around as he grew older. And as the years passed, he got more spiritual, and so he was hanging out in a cave meditating one day, and as he was meditating, something astonishing happened. An angel, Gabriel, appeared before him and revealed the word of Allah, or God. And the angel told him he had been chosen by Allah as a prophet or a messenger. And he began to then teach in Mecca. So Muhammad's teaching the word of God, or Allah, in Mecca. And he called the Arabs to worship one true God. He said every Arab should worship one true God. And in Arabic, the word Islam means to submit. So you're submitting yourself to God, Islam. And Muhammad's followers became known as Muslims. And that means those who submit to God. So many local leaders, as with all religions, as they're growing, just like happened to Jesus, saw Islam and Muhammad as a threat. And so they kicked him out. So Muhammad and his followers left Mecca and traveled to a city called Medina. And they traveled there, and he continued his teaching among the Arab tribes. And he had a strong enough following years later, enough people were believing what he was saying that they went back and took over Mecca. And they returned Mecca and made it the holy shrine of Islam. He unexpectedly died in 632. But the Muslim leaders who followed him continued to win over converts and explain and expand their religion. And years later, it had moved beyond just Arabia and was the main religion of the Middle East, that region we call those 22 countries that make up the Middle East. And it spread all over. Now, the main beliefs of Islam are very similar to Judaism and Christianity in ways. Islam recognized prophets such as Abraham, Moses, and Jesus, but they think that Muhammad was the last and final prophet, and he was the complete messenger of God. They believe that the Quran, Q-U-R-A-N, is the Muslim holy book, and this contains all the words of God as he revealed them to Muhammad. So their holy book is called the Quran. They revere that Muhammad's life was an example how Muslims should live. And there's a bunch of stories called the Hadith that they look to and read, and those are like the teachings of how you should live your life. There are 5 required acts of worship, and these are called the 5 pillars. They're very important. They're the main ideas of what a Muslim does to practice Islam. The first pillar is professing or admitting that there is one God. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is the final prophet. That's just as the first pillar reads. This pillar is talking about, again, worshiping one God. The second pillar is daily prayer. You're expected to pray 5 times a day if you're Muslim. dawn, noon, mid-afternoon, sunset, and after nightfall. They kneel before God and recite verses of the Quran. It doesn't have to take place in a mosque. It can take place anywhere, but you have to pray 5 times a day. The third pillar is charity. Every Muslim is told that they have to give at least 2.5% of their wealth every year to the needy. The Quran says you'll never attain righteousness until you give up what you love. So that was the third one. The fourth pillar is fasting. And fasting instructs Muslims to not eat or drink during daylight hours for a month. And this month is called Ramadan. Fasting is meant to encourage self-control and cleanse the body and spirit and renew it with faith. The fifth and final pillar is the pilgrimage to Mecca, called the Hajj. And this takes place in the 12th month of the year, but basically it's saying every Muslim is expected to make the journey to Mecca at least once in their life. And Mecca, again, is in the Middle East. Now, Islam extended and spread over several centuries. It spread all over the world. It's a missionary religion, which means that people go around seeking to win over converts. And it has waged holy wars with different religions over their practice of religion. But it's a very misunderstood religion because of events like 9/11, because of terrorist acts. You know, it's like a few bad seeds ruin the bunch. Those are bad people doing bad things. It's not saying that all Arabs or all Muslims or anyone who practices Islam is bad. So that's what we have to get a lot of people to understand, because it's very easy to have these ignorant views of over 1 billion people when one or two or a small group is acting out. So that's what we want to understand there, that there are a lot of similarities in all 3 of these Abrahamic faiths that we've learned about.